So this is Professor BRB, and today in the fifth video in this playlist we will draw a flower pot and some stems and leaves. So let's get started. You can navigate to the flower pot artboard number 5 from the status panel down at the bottom of your screen, or you can find it in the artboard panel here. For this playlist, we're using the Essentials Classic workspace, so you might want to switch to that. And this is a very simple lesson because we have really previously, for the flower pot, we have previously used all these skills. So we're going to start off and draw a rectangle with the rectangle tool. And you'll notice that when this pops up that we have the little targets on all 4 corners, which isn't what we want. And if we were to grab those, it would round all 4 corners. Command Z, which is not what we want. So we're going to take the direct selection tool, which allows us to select individual, individual corners. And we're going to click off to deselect into a blank area, and then just draw a little marquee around the 2 bottom ones. So now you notice we just have the little targets on those, so that's cool. So just drag it in till it looks the way you want it to look. I made mine a little more rounded this time, but that's fine. And now I want the bottom to be a little more narrow than the top, and that's pretty easy to do using your arrow keys on your keyboard. So still with the direct selection tool, click on a blank area and draw a little marquee around one corner. And I use the arrow tools on my keyboard and I just count. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then on this one, same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now I notice that mine aren't moving very much, and that's because of the way I set my preferences, and I'm going to show you how to customize your preferences. If you go to Illustrator Preferences General, or if you're on a PC, it'll be under the Edit menu. And I'm going to change this to 03 inches, 0.03. So you got to have that 0 dot there. And then just click OK. And now you'll see it'll move a lot more. And I change this keyboard increment around depending on what I'm doing. So there I just did 2 and 2. That's nice and symmetrical. Looks good. So we'll move this down here. And we'll use the rounded rectangle to draw the top of the pot. And you might remember from a previous video that while you're drawing with the mouse button still down, you can increase the radius by hitting your up arrow key. You can move it around by holding down your space bar, and you can get it exactly the way that you want. So directing your attention, we're going to use the align tools again, directing your attention to the control panel up here. Select both shapes, and you'll see as soon as we have 2 shapes selected, and you select both shapes by having one selected, holding down your shift key and selecting the other, that my align tools come up. And you can double check to make sure it's set to align to selection, and then just horizontal align center. Perfect. Obviously I don't want a white fill on this, so I'll select my bottom pot here, and I have a nice gradient here for it. And I'll select the rim and just give it a kind of a darkish brown. And I'd like to group these two. Oh, well, I want to get rid of the black outline. I'm always big on getting rid of the black outlines. Sometimes we forget about them, but often you're artwork will look better without them. So I'm going to select both of these, holding down the Shift key, and group them, just so that I can move them around together. So now I have a flower pot, and we're going to take a look next at the stroke panel. So the stroke panel is a very powerful panel, and when you first click on it, you may just get this little thin one, but if you go to the panel menu and choose Show Options, you'll get all kinds of stuff. So first we're going to go to the Arc tool, which we used in the Heart lesson, as you may recall, which is under the Line Segment tool. And before we start drawing, let's set up our colors. Let's choose No Fill. And for the stroke, let's choose a nice green. So we don't want to fill in this case because we're just dealing with the stroke. So going with our Arc tool, we just click and drag, and oops, if it comes in the wrong direction, just hit your F key and that will flip it. Now you see my stroke is just one point here. You can see that in two places, up here in the control panel and down here in the stroke. And I can make it fatter. Let's go, kind of do it by eye there. I think 5 points looks pretty good. And there are other things that you can control here in the stroke panel, which are kind of useful to know about. For example, you can control the end cap. Let me zoom in on this so you can see what happens here. See that? A little round end, or so that's kind of nice to know. You can also control corners, and when this might be an issue is, well, I'm going to draw something real quick and show you what I mean. You have corner controls here too. And if you see that corner I just drew up there, oh wait, got to select it first. Don't forget that. You can see I can round that, or I can give it a bevel join. And I can control my caps here. So you can kind of mix and match your effects. It's kind of good to know how to do that. And I want to point one more thing out. I'm going to make a closed shape out of this this is a pen tool, we'll be learning this later. When I make a closed shape, which means that it's like a sealed closed circle, there's no open ends on it, my align stroke controls come alive. They were grayed out before. And this is super handy because my default is the stroke is aligned on both sides of the path equally, but I can also align to the center or to the outside, and you can get some interesting effects mixing and matching this with the corner controls. So I suggest that you fool around with that a little bit when you have some time to play. The stroke panel is very powerful indeed. So let's draw ourselves another stem there. And next I'm going to create these leaves, and these are made with the width tool, which is a really neat, fairly recently added feature to Illustrator. So let me just start with a line here. And going back to our stroke panel, if I select these leaves to be here, you'll notice down at the bottom it says Profile, Uniform, and that's also up here in your control panel. And Illustrator ships with some width profiles, and again you can make those a little more dramatic by controlling the stroke weight. That actually works kind of well, doesn't it? These are just standard ones that Illustrator ships with, but you can make your own. I'm going to show you how to do it right now. Back to uniform. And you do that with this little width tool right here. And what this allows you to do is to create a custom width profile. And it's really kind of nice to work with. And you have really a lot of control. I mean, you can do one in the middle here if you want. And you have all kinds of choices. You can make all kinds of interesting shapes. Oops, wait, hold on, didn't mean to do that. So I'm going to make a width profile here, a little bit different. And maybe change, nah, it's better. So you just kind of fool around with this until you like the way it looks. And if you find one that you like, then you can actually save it by, with it selected, going down, and see this little add to profiles? And you can call it I'm going to call it Leafy. And then it'll be there. And you can apply it just with one click, which is kind of nice. I'm going to make that a darker green there. There we go. So that concludes this lesson. And what we're going to do next in the very final video is we're going to put it all together, and we'll learn a little bit about stacking and bringing items to the front and the back. So that will be the last video in this playlist. So I thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you for that video.